All right. Hey, Kevin, welcome. How you going?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. So I've just pressed record here. So we'll be on YouTube doing this bit. So hello, viewer on YouTube. It's awesome to. I'm not quite sure I could sound more Australian there, but it's awesome to have you here and joining me and Kevin for this conversation, which is all about having kick-ass boundaries. So Kevin, like you're American, so it's probably going to be like kick-ass.
Kick ass.
Yeah. So, viewer, take your pick. Which pronunciation you'd rather go with, kick ass or kick ass.
Both are perfect.
Yeah, no, one's more perfect than the other, viewer. Let's just say that. Both are equally valid, but one's more valid. So
it's not the American way. It's not the American way.
That's all right. That's all right. Okay, so let's jump in. Hey, this is going to be awesome. Yeah, we'll jump on in. So, viewer, I hope you've got a coffee. I've got a coffee. Kevin, unfortunately, is pretty much finished his. So, yeah, we might just have to, I don't know, reach through the camera and yeah, it's like it's gonna be very messy. Me pouring you a coffee. All right. So, you ready?
Ready.
All right, everything's going there. Hey, welcome to Connection Over Coffee with me, Phil McAuliffe, the loneliness guy. Today, in this conversation, we're going to have a cracking chat with my friend Kevin Moran, who's in Hawaii about developing kick-ass boundaries. Say hi, Kevin.
Hello.
This podcast, I need to say before we go on, this podcast contains content relating to the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of gay men. If that's going to offend you or anyone in earshot, now's the time for you to move on. But if you're down for a conversation about developing kick-ass boundaries, how about you and Kevin go and get us a coffee? Or no, I'll get the coffees. You sit down, you go get us a table, and I'll be right back with the coffees after this little message from my friend Michael. All right. This is now like episode 32, and I still have to read these notes, and I still stuff them up. You would have thought that after doing this for 18 months, I would get that down packed, but no, I don't.
I'm the same way. Yep.
So it sounds, yeah.
We're human and yep,
yeah,
it's hard.
Yeah. So there was one day that I did this, and instead of physical, mental, and emotional well-being, the day before I'd done a whole 5 episodes back to back, recorded 5 episodes back to back for the Lonely Diplomat podcast. And wow. Instead of physical, mental, and emotional well-being, I did political, social, and economic. And I'm like, no, let's just stop that and take 2. This is not political, social, and economic well-being of gay men. This is physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Yeah. I love it. I get very confused, viewer. I am a simple country boy at heart. So yeah. Anyway, let's crack in. I'll just take another sip. Okay. All right, here you go. Now, if this is the first time that you've joined me for Connection Over Coffee, I want to say hi, welcome, and I want to just let you know how proud I am of you simply pressing play, because loneliness is not the easiest topic to engage on, and very few people, unless they realize that they're lonely, actually go searching for content on social media on YouTube about anything to do with loneliness. And if your finger hovered over the play button and you kind of wrestled within yourself about what this means for you, you've just wrestled with the stigma of loneliness. You've just gotten a real life example within yourself about the awfulness of loneliness. And here you are, you pressed play. Well done. I'm proud of you. Now that you're here, we're just going to have a great chat with Kevin about boundaries, which are going to be like so important for any person, but particularly for you as a gay man experiencing loneliness, either experiencing or have experienced. But you're going to be a gay man who experiences loneliness undoubtedly in the future as well. If you are a return coffee participant, welcome. It's just awesome. Always awesome to have you here joining me for coffee. And if you're first-time listener, if you are because you know Kevin and you love his work and this is the first time that you've engaged with my content, welcome. Stay in touch with my content, and let's not let the social media behemoths determine what content you receive. Join my mailing list. Go to thelonelynessguy.com /subscribe. There's a contact, there'll be a link in the episode description, and join my mailing list. Or if you would like more of me directly in your life, join the Facebook group for premium members of The Loneliness Guy. Join the little band of awesome gay men from around the world who are working to put themselves into the world in their awesome, beautiful human ways, with some love and support of other gay men who are doing the same. If that sounds great to you, come and join us. All the details are in the episode description. Kevin.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We had this conversation just like we had a, viewer, listener, I always have the greatest conversations with my guests before I press play. So I always want to keep something, in the tank for when I press record. But Kevin, you're kind of jumping out of your skin for this for this episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am. I just love this topic. It's just one that's like I'm very naturally passionate about, and it's fun to be on this side. And I just love the work that you do, and like we were saying, the connections that you are creating and crafting all over the world, and just to be a tiny sliver of it is so meaningful to me. So thank you for this opportunity, and just thank you for everything that you do. From one gay man to another, it's so beautiful to see, and it means the world. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for joining us, everyone, on this episode. We're just going to wrap it up here with some positive feedback about me and my work. That's enough. I feel good now. And I'll see you next episode. No. Thank you. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes it's very hard for me to receive feedback. It has been very hard for me to receive feedback, particularly positive feedback, because there's lots of conditioning there, both conditioning that I've done within myself, for myself over years, but also society, and it doesn't be to be an Australian man and go, yeah, I am awesome. We don't do that. It's not acceptable. But I receive that. Thank you so much. It does make my soul happy to receive that, because that's what it's all about. These little connections, one connection at a time, by showing up just as we are. And before we get into all of this, and I want to like hasten this. Kevin, you've joined the group of coaches that I recommend to my audience for those of you, the viewer, the listener, who are going, you know what, I do feel lonely. I am inspired to take a step, but I really don't know how. And have listened to what I've been saying for the many, like now 32 episodes, that loneliness shifts when you do connection. But doing of connection is actually really hard. And the doing of authentic connection is even harder still. So Kevin, I'm really like, I love your work. I love how you do your work as a coach for queer folk, but also that you are all about helping people become themselves, and that's the key to moving beyond loneliness. So I'm just so chuffed that you're in the team. And again, there's going to be an episode in the episode description. So, I won't read out a very long web address for you to madly scribble down. Just, go and have a click on it and go and check out Kevin and his work. So, Kevin, with all of that, who are you? Who are you?
Yes. So as you mentioned, my name is Kevin. Pronouns are he, him, his, or they, them. Totally cool either way. I do currently live in Hawaii. I'm originally from the great Midwestern state of Ohio. Grew up on a farm boy at heart. Still like a very simple person to this day, and I always will be. But I am married. My husband Matt is in the military, so that's kind of what got us out here in Hawaii. Professionally speaking, personally as well, we have a dog, and she's just the light of our lives. So I always have to say hi to Allie. But professionally speaking, I am a mental health coach. So I help, as you were saying, I help queer folks simply feel better, in whatever capacity that looks like. I kind of like to keep it broad in that sense, because feeling better could mean a million different things to us. For some people, it could be looking at that aspect of loneliness, or interpersonal connections. For some folks, that aspect of feeling better aligns with finances or with relationships or personal identity. In the core of my work, that's that's the golden thread that kind of keeps it together. Is that in my work with clients, I always just try to help people feel better, just to show up as one human to the next. Professionally speaking as well, I'm a trained therapist, a trained counselor, but I transitioned into coaching really because I just love that human aspect of it. I know I'm another person here. I'm not necessarily an expert. I have education and experience, but I wouldn't call myself an expert in any means, but I just love showing up face to face, or across the screen from people who are feel safe within our space that we can create, and just to provide that support that they're looking for. So that's kind of what I do. I love to write. I love to do creative projects as well. So I will be like doing some more with that I'm really excited for in the coming weeks. So that's a little bit about me.
And you wrote, developing kick-ass boundaries, which we published on the website, I think the 21st of October, so last week, which is awesome. So we're going to dig into that. You can write, which is great. How do you then, Kevin, knowing that this is a podcast about loneliness, so as a gay man, How do you experience loneliness?
Yeah, that's such a great question. For me personally, I mm, I feel like it's definitely transitioned over the years. You know, the loneliness that I experience now is different from the loneliness that I experienced before. You know, and as life transitions, and as you know, I learn new skills, new ways of coping, and as you know, just life changes itself. You know, different jobs or different relationships or you know, different environments. You know, all those pieces kind of change what loneliness looks like to me. You know, so for me now, you know, in this moment, I think the best way that I can frame it is like loneliness feels like a dead end. You know, it feels like I've reached the end of the road. And then that gets really scary and anxiety inducing for me, because it's like, you know, shit, what next? Or where do we go from here? And it's reaching that dead end in the middle of the night where, you know, where I feel like I can't turn to anybody else. You know, like there might be houses around, but the blinds are shut, you know, the lights are off and nobody's home. So that's what loneliness kind of feels like. And it feels like I have a decision at that time to be like, okay, how do I get out of this? Or how do I find that the road keeps going? Like, what does that look like? I know that's like a broad, like abstract example. So like more concretely, you know, loneliness shows up a lot in my work, honestly. Like as in the coaching field, there's a lot of great benefits to it, but with it being, you know, often like solopreneurship or entrepreneurship based, you know, I feel like I don't have any coworkers, I feel like I don't have any colleagues. And so like, it's just when I wake up and I commute from the bedroom to the office, it's just me, you know, and then that feels really, really lonely sometimes, where, you know, I can really easily get in my head and be like, you know, am I doing the right thing? Am I making a difference? And I don't have somebody where I can go to, or I feel like I don't have somebody where I can go to ask those questions to, or to receive that feedback. So I have to either, you know, find ways to coach myself through that, or, you know, find that support and who I can reach out to. So that's one of the big things currently where loneliness shows up for me.
Thank you for sharing that, because that's actually, you know, I did give you advance notice of that question, but it's always a confronting question to answer. And I think you hit the nail right on the head, you know, when you said that, you know, it's very abstract. And that's the difficulty with loneliness. It's a very abstract feeling. And you did awesomely, like you've got the words, but how do you describe the void? How do you describe essentially nothing?
Yeah, it's fucking hard. You know, and like I think that's one of like the unique challenges of it, is like we all know what that is, but it's like I know, you know, and I know the listener knows, you know, and I know what that feeling is, but we don't have that language for it.
No. And I find, just a reflection, like I love words. I love words. Words are like my friend, you know, and some people, you know, are very, you know, numerally literate. So they're at one with the numbers. They can make numbers sing, like, great. I look at a page of numbers and I'm like, but give me words, and like I love like playing with words. I love like the images that words evoke, and that we can paint with our words, and we can connect with our words. But sometimes even words aren't enough to describe something. So I actually find there to be great beauty in a really I don't want to say depressing way, but like there's beauty in the melancholy of words about loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
And there is also beauty in the words about connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to say thank you for very eloquently answering that question about how does loneliness show up for you? How do you experience loneliness? Because in my mind's eye, you know, I could see, you know, houses down the street, everyone else is asleep. It like shutters are down, lights are off, you know, there's no sound, it's dark, it's empty. You know that there are people, but you can't be with them because they're not conscious.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and even Matt might not be conscious, you know, in the same bed, and you can't, like, he can't be there for you.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think that's a beautiful, like, beautiful visual image. And I just wanted to highlight that, because yeah, it is, and listener, viewer, particularly if you're a regular, I want to start asking that question to each of my guests, because it is something that brings the focus of this whole podcast onto the experience of loneliness and destigmatizing it. But it is something. So, you know, if I don't do it, please give me feedback and go, you didn't ask it. So I'm asking for your support and accountability, viewer and listener. But yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah. And
yeah.
And if I could, you know, just to, I wanted to be really, really diligent with, I'm right there with you. I love words. I love the power that they have. And I wanted to be diligent in saying that, like, you know, with that metaphor where, you know, I feel like I can't go up to the house and ring the doorbell, you know, but, you know, that's what loneliness is, you know, but I also know that at the same time, you know, what's stopping me from going up to the doorbell, when I know that that's the very thing that would turn the lights on and that would wake everybody up, you know. So to me, like, that's that push and pull where, you know, I notice the most when I'm lonely is where I feel like I have no control. And then it takes that very, you know, that very diligent step of being like, nope, I need to wake up here and say, okay, what can I do? I know I can do something here. You know, I know that the antidote that I'm looking for is that connection. So how do I need to find that? You know, and like for just for me personally, that's that tug of war that I always feel. You know, it is in that moment, you know, feeling like I have no control here.
Yeah.
But then wanting to look and say, okay, well, you know, how can I, you know, forge what I'm needing here too.
Yeah. And I think the whole sort of visual metaphor of night and being in the dark speaks and links really beautifully to just the previous conversation. So in episode 31 with Justin Oberst, where we talked about the loneliness of change and the anguish of dark nights of the soul. And I want to say this, that, you know, in taking your metaphor, and I realize that we haven't even gotten to boundaries yet. Oh my God, this is like I love this chat though, but we're getting to boundaries, everyone. Relax. But, you know, when we're looking, you know, at those other houses, we know during the daytime, when things are good, we feel lovely and we can see people and we feel connected and we feel good within ourselves and we feel part of a wider community, that there are people in those other houses who have said to us, if you need anything, we're here for you. Mm-hmm. And we need to take it on there as given that means, you know, at 3 p.m. as well as 3 a.m. we're here for you. But, you know, the whole, I don't want to wake them up. I don't want to disturb them. You know, is this really worthy of me going in and ringing the doorbell at 3 a.m., knowing that I will wake them up, that I will inconvenience them? And this is almost a perfect metaphor. It's like, you know, I won't go and wake them up because I don't want to inconvenience them. But, you know, if the shoe was on the other foot and you're asleep and they were experiencing a dark night of the soul and you had said and genuinely meant it, you would want them to ring your doorbell at 3 a.m. Yeah, you might be like a bit groggy. You might be like, what? Like, you know, coming out of your stupor. But you're going to put the kettle on. You're going to, you know, get a cup of tea going. You're going to have a chat with them because it's an honor and a privilege to do so. But yet, when we're the ones experiencing it, but we can convince ourselves that we're not worthy of it. We're not worthy, the thoughts and feelings that we experience of it. So we keep ourselves, aren't worthy of ringing someone else's doorbell. And so we sit in the dark, feeling like shit, and our loneliness, and it feels like the dawn never comes. The dawn always comes. That's the rule. But at 3 a.m., when everything's quiet, it feels like it's always 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Fuck, I love this. This has just blown my mind.
Yeah. I love how you just carried that too. Wow, that was beautiful.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to, like, there's gonna have to be like some like further content beyond, like, you know, Dark Night of the Soul and stuff. But it just really speaks to me, and I didn't want to let that opportunity go past. Because yeah, I love it. Thank you, Kevin.
Of course.
So
thank you.
We're talking about boundaries. I promised that we would get onto boundaries, and you know, we're a way into the episode, and we're on the boundaries now. But I do this. You wrote about boundaries and how there are sort of rigid boundaries and porous boundaries, and we all have boundaries. And somewhere on the spectrum, our boundaries and individual boundaries lay on individuals on the spectrum. How have boundaries helped you in the, I guess, you know, working through loneliness, working through those 3 a.m.s, you know, going back to the dark metaphor? How have boundaries helped you when you've experienced loneliness?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great question. You know, boundaries are a challenging thing because, you know, there's this fear that we have, and very rightfully so, this fear that we have that if I implement a boundary, I'm going to lose connection, or I'm going to lose somebody. You know, and so a common theme that we often see, and you know, we might feel it within ourselves. We might be able to notice it maybe within the queer community, maybe, you know, at work, or just through an observational lens, is, you know, the setting of porous boundaries. So, you know, just to do a bit of brief education, you know, like you were saying, Phil, there are 3 different types of boundaries. You know, there's I like to use like a metaphor of a teeter-totter, or like a seesaw. You know, on the one hand, you know, porous boundaries are on one end of that teeter-totter, and they are those types of boundaries that, you know, it feels like people are walking all over us. You know, it feels like we're a floor mat, you know, and we feel used. But, you know, we often, whether consciously or subconsciously, you know, sometimes we set porous boundaries because we are looking for connection. You know, we think that, oh, if I, you know, maybe if I'm really loose with my boundaries and I I do things that maybe I don't want to do, but I'm trying to please other people, then that's going to bring some connection. And it might for a moment, but it's ultimately not going to be that connection that we're looking for, or that's sustainable, or that's meaningful to us. So those are porous boundaries. Then on the other end, we have rigid boundaries, and those are the ones that, it feels like a 6 foot deep, 10-foot tall, wall, like concrete wall with no windows, something very, very strong. Those are boundaries that we are very, very clear about, and we wouldn't think twice about, crossing them. We often, again, could be consciously, could be subconsciously, set those types of rigid boundaries out of safety, out of a need for safety. Maybe we have been hurt at some point. Maybe someone has hurt us, and so we set these very rigid boundaries to keep ourselves safe. And again, that's not a bad thing. It's rightfully understandable that we do that. However, the caveat to that is sometimes the rigid boundaries can be out of balance. That's why they're on that other end of the seesaw. They can be out of balance where they're preventing us from letting anybody in. It's keeping us from feeling any type of connection. So then in the middle of that seesaw visual, we have those healthy boundaries. And for me, I like to think of healthy boundaries in the sense of like a castle, where we are on the inside of the castle. We're the only ones there, but the castle has windows, it has guards, it has a drawbridge, it has a moat around it, but we get to look out the windows and see people and see if we want to let people in. We get to put that drawbridge down and let people in. We get to decide how long that they're there for, what rooms they occupy, what we do inside of the castle, and then we get to decide when they leave. So healthy boundaries, are they are those limits and rules that we have for ourselves and for our interactions with other people that we're strong about, but there's a give and take there. We know that our intention in setting those healthy boundaries is to maintain and to build connection, but we want to do so in a safe and like sustainable way.
Yeah.
So I think connecting that back to loneliness, is when those times when we are feeling really lonely, and we maybe we know that connection is that thing that we need. We might feel a dramatic urge to set really porous boundaries out of a need for connection, and maybe in like a romantic, or I always think of just for me personally, like it's helpful to think of boundaries in a sexual way, because that's something that all of us are very clear typically on, like where our boundaries are, for the most part. And
Yeah.
so to make that connection there, like porous boundaries would be like, do whatever you want because I want to feel something. I want to feel some sort of connection. But then we leave that experience and we're like, oh my God, like that doesn't sit well with me because, I said yes in ways that I didn't authentically want to, like there's disconnection within ourselves there. And so that's where I feel like, where we want to be really diligent when talking about, boundaries and loneliness is that balance of, we know that connection is the thing that we're looking for to help with that loneliness. But we also want to make sure that we're not seeking connection that is in conflict with the boundaries that we have, because then that's going to lead us to feeling disconnected from ourselves at the end of the day. And we'll just exacerbate that loneliness even more.
How then, in your mind, are values and boundaries linked? Our personal values, how are they linked to our values? Our boundaries.
Yeah, to me, our personal values and our personal beliefs are the seeds from where like our boundaries grow. So when we know those, those aspects of ourselves, or those aspects of relationships and interactions with other people that we feel to be right, that we feel that we deserve, that are in line with, how we want to perceive ourselves and how we want to live as ourselves, then it's out of those core components that we get to set our boundaries and get to establish where they are. So as an example, someone's value, a value that they might have might be, to treat everyone with kindness. So then a very clear boundary to them would be like not flipping their neighbor off, if they stepped on their lawn, because like that wouldn't be in alignment there with that initial value. And so I love that you brought that up, because that if we're having trouble setting our boundaries, or, not sure where they are, that's a really helpful place to begin, is like looking at those internal beliefs and values, because then from there, then we can set where those boundaries might be.
Yeah, and in my work, in the coaching work that I do with Mike Campbell, they're linked. Like, you find out what your values are, you do some work within yourself, you become curious, you pay attention to your responses to stimuli, and responses being positive, responses being negative, and anywhere on that spectrum. And by paying attention to how you respond to things happening to you or around you, then they're a pretty big clue. You're giving yourself a big clue about what's important to you, and then kindly and honestly digging into yourself, asking, I say, unleash the inner 4-year-old by going, why? And this is a conversation. This is a conversation that I recorded last year with Michael Diorio on values, and your values are like getting a bespoke suit. Sure, you can go to a department store and get, values off the rack, and, you can kind of mold your body to fit the suit. But we're worth going to a good, reputable tailor, and tailor/coach, tailor/therapist, tailor/someone who loves us, who, can help us, take measurements, and, has some skills to help us with developing, with making our value suit that fits us, and we look good, we feel good, because that's us, right? And so, I really wanted to say that, like, that values are like interwoven, indelibly linked, cannot be separated from boundaries.
Right.
And because you have to know who you are and why, and then the castle walls, you know when to lower the drawbridge, when, no, that's enough, like, no more from you, thank you, you're not getting any more of me, drawbridge comes up. When to take the sharks out of the moat, or put sharks and alligators and crocodiles into the moat, and or whatever. And I think in your podcast on the United Outsiders about boundaries, you were talking, in with a lot of the same examples that you just gave. And I think that's really important to flag there, that your boundaries, and we're big into visual metaphors in this chat, aren't we, Kevin? It's like, but being in a castle, and you get to decide, like, your castle is you get to decide how it's decorated, you get to decide how it's laid out, you get to decide so many things. You get to decide if someone who you allow in just gets into the reception, into the living room, or if they come into the kitchen, or if they come into the bedroom, into your intimate chambers. And you get to decide, or if they stay out in the yard, or if they don't even get near the moat.
Mhm.
You know, you get to decide all of that. And that, with that comes power.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so, yeah, potentially, if you're feeling lonely and no one's in your castle, you know, it might be like, are my drawbridges too high? No, not too high, but like, are they up? Am I
Yeah.
accessible?
Mhm.
And I think that's a beautiful point that you made. It's like, there are many reasons why we draw up the drawbridge.
Mhm.
Many, 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 many very valid reasons.
Mhm.
And if lowering the drawbridge is always scary,
Mhm.
because we have to trust the person coming in that they're not going to be, you know, it's not a Trojan horse. It looks
Mhm.
lovely, but then there's like evil intent inside, right?
Yeah.
But you know, lowering the drawbridge requires that trust that the person who's coming in is benevolent,
Mm.
not malevolent.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, I right along with that too, you know, we have to trust ourselves. We have to trust that we are making an informed decision here. You know, and I think that piece is just as important too. You know, we need to trust ourselves and knowing that, you know, okay, I trust that I am making the right decision here for me in this moment. Um, you know, and I always love, especially with boundaries and just in you know other aspects and topics too, but those moments where we can, you know, put ourselves in the driver's seat. I say that phrase to my clients all the time, but you know, we really want to do that, because the more that we can do that, the more that we are saying yes to ourselves and giving ourselves permission and space. And you know, it just really kickstarts you know, self-esteem, self-confidence, and gets them going, you know, when we can give ourselves that own space. And so, you know, as like we're lowering that drawbridge, you know, yeah, you know, we absolutely need to, you know, be assessing, you know, is this person in alignment with the values that I have, you know, and then am I able to trust myself in this moment to make that decision? You know, it's kind of like both of those pieces there too. And if both, you know, if we can check both of those boxes, and you know, hey, that's awesome.
Mm. Yeah, I love. I think trust is such, well, it's an enormous topic. It's an enormous topic, and for many of us, trust is something that we can point to multiple instances in our lives where trust has been broken. Trust has been broken. And this is, I think, where we're getting to the meat of this, that, you know, someone has come into our castle, has, you know, stolen, has wrecked the place, has, you know, just not been a good guest. Not been a good guest in, you know, our house, our castle, whatever. And in response, like, no, I'm not letting that fucking happen again. No, no more, never again. Never again. Or they're like, okay, well, you know, no one else is knocking on the door. Maybe that's how I need to, you know, I just need to let people, you know, steal the silverware. And, you know, that's, you know, I'm only worthy of allowing, like, people who can come in, and I'm only worthy of the type of people in my life who steal shit from me and fuck things up. This is hard, because I don't know about you, listener. I don't know about you, viewer, and Kevin. I don't know about you right now, but for me, I'm like going, okay, like how are the quality of my boundaries right now? And I'm the loneliness guy. Like, and I proudly profess that, you know, I still get lonely. I still experience loneliness. I'm still human, so I still experience loneliness because loneliness is a human condition. Just as much as I still experience joy, I still experience happiness, I still experience grief, I still experience all the wonders of the human emotive experience. I still experience it, including loneliness, but it's still like, it still sits like right here. I'm thumping on my chest, listener. Like you can't see this, but I'm like, you know, thumping on my heart. I'm feeling it and reflecting on my boundaries. What about you, Kevin?
Yeah.
Like you're saying these words. What's happening with you now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I'm really glad you brought that up because I just want to preface that. Oh, for heaven's sakes, you know, I am, you know, I'm human. You know, I make mistakes. You know, I fuck up my boundaries all the time. You know, I'm not perfect. You know, I make mistakes. I disrespect other people's boundaries. You know, hopefully most of the times not out of intention, but you know, I'm human and I mess up. And that like ties into, I think one of the most powerful, to me, one of the most powerful aspects of boundaries and why I love to talk about them so much is because, you know, we are the only person who gets to decide what our boundaries are. You know, nobody else gets to make that decision. Other people can have feedback and they're going to have opinions and they're going to be, you know, throwing things at us, you know, saying your boundaries are wrong or, you know, all this crap. But at the end of the day, you know, we're the only people who get to decide what our boundaries are. You know, and so when we misstep in our boundaries, when we disrespect somebody else's boundaries, you know, then we feel that, you know, oh shit, I stepped out of line with my values. That's why I don't feel good about this. But now I get to make a decision and I get to change that because I don't like how I feel right now. You know, or, you know, in those times of loneliness, you know, we get to ask those questions, you know, are my walls too high in this moment, you know, or are they too low in this moment, you know, and we want to be careful and like, and not, we don't want to put any judgment on that. We don't want to put judgment on ourselves and say like why the fuck do I do this? Why do I put my wall so high? Or, you know, why do I let people walk all over me? We don't want to do that. But what we want to say, you know, like, okay, I notice, I observe that my wall might be high here. How can I lower that? Because I want to feel connection. Or, you know, maybe like I don't like that feeling of being walked all over. So how can I raise that a little bit to then find authentic connection? You know, I think that's another really important piece is not judging ourselves in the process. You know, just it's a hard one.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, good. Yeah, that's a really good point. And how do I not judge myself harshly and go?
Yeah.
Like, the answer now, Kevin.
Yeah. Like, I'm still finding it too. You know, and so like for an example, you know, sometimes there are times where Matt and I are going to bed and you know, it feels like we're like a foot and a half away from each other, but it feels like, you know, we're worlds apart, or that, you know, that like we can't say something. Maybe we've had an argument that like earlier that day and it feels like we can't talk about it. You know, then like peeking into that moment and saying, okay, you know, I don't want to judge what's happening here, but I just want to notice because I want to feel that connection. I'm feeling really lonely right now. You know, why is that? What's going on here? You know, and oftentimes it's in those moments where just going on with that example, you know, if we had an argument and we're both going to bed angry, but I feel lonely, but I want to feel connected to him. I know like what's standing in that way is often like that pride, you know, that I have to be the one who's right, you know, and then it's like, okay, I see how that pride is that wall that's too high for me right now. So I get to make a decision at that time of, well, do I want a high wall, or do I want to feel connection? And hopefully I choose the connection one. And so like, that's the part about boundaries I think is really powerful, is, since we are the only ones in the driver's seat, when things aren't sitting right, we get to take action and to adjust it. Rather than to feel like we're like blowing, being like blown over like in a hurricane, we get to change that weather there. We have control.
Yeah. I think the thing that's coming up for me is, and that example of going to bed angry is a great one. And because we're humans, and whenever more than, even within ourselves, we fight within ourselves, right? But when we're in, a relationship with another human, however that relationship is, if it's a marriage, if it's, a partnership, if it's a friendship, if it's a work relationship, whatever it is, like, whenever you get more than one human together at a time, the sparks can fly. And that's both awesome and terrifying and extremely frustrating and stuff, particularly when the world and other people don't bend to your worldview. And so this for me, this has been a big part of me sort of learning how I am. And I mentioned, a little while ago, having that paying attention to the stimuli and the trigger. And to me, this is a big one, because I'm like A-grade stubborn. I am like so stubborn, or can be so stubborn. And I'm like, no, I'm digging myself in. Like, I'm here to prove you wrong. Like, you're wrong, I'm right, and stuff. And this, a whole lot of reasons. This, me being stubborn, has come in response to, I don't want to say like oversell it, but like trauma. But, it's the result of young me making 2 + 2 = 370. And it manifested in stubbornness, right? Yeah. But there's a good part. There's stubborn is negative, let's say, but the positive of that is I'm like so determined. Like, but I get to choose how that determination manifests, right? But back to stubbornness. Like I'm digging in. I'm like, I'm the guy who constructs like well thought out barbs, like, and that will eviscerate you, that will take you out at your knees. Next time this comes up, look out. Like, I've rehearsed all the lines. And then, of course, when we have that conversation, I'm like, no, I can't think of anything right now. I'm like so overwhelmed. Like, there is nothing going on in my mind. It's fight or flight. I'm going to be saying things like, I know I am, but what are you? And like all these kind of things. And all those well-rehearsed, barbs and stuff have gone. And then 15 minutes after the conversation, I'm like, I should have said this, and this. Like, this is how much you suck, and this is how many ways that you've disappointed me and stuff like that. Anyway, that's me. that's me. But I think stubbornness is a really good, or like stubbornness, pride, the need to be right, and that fork in the road. And I often talk about fork in the roads that you described just then, Kevin, with you and Matt having had a fight that day, and you just like, I want to be right, but I also want, to give him a hug and say, yeah, like, that's shit. Like, yeah, that's a really important fork in the road. And there's that often said maxim of like, never go to bed angry. But the fork in the road point is like, do I go, you know what? I'm sorry for my part in that argument. You're still an idiot. I'm still right, but I'm sorry. Like, you could say, I'm sorry that you're so wrong.
Right. Right. Yeah.
That's not what we're going to do. No, that doesn't go over well. But, I'm sorry for my part in that.
Yeah.
I am frustrated. And I said something that I didn't want to, that I didn't mean to, and I would like to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And that right there is a moment of beautiful connection. That's vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And that's lowering the drawbridge.
Mm-hmm.
There's no control then whether Matt goes, well, fuck you. I'm still mad at you. Like, I'm going to punish you. Or Matt also lowers his drawbridge and comes out, and you meet halfway.
Yeah.
Right. So when you lower your drawbridge first, that's like real vulnerability right there, and that's uncomfortable. Or you can, keep the drawbridge up and remain convinced of your correctness.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a really hard, really common decision point.
Yeah.
Where we experience it, particularly when we're in conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So this is turning into be a chat like rich in metaphors and visual metaphors. And you said that you often say, Kevin, to your clients that putting them in the driver's seat of their life. So we've had, being in our houses at night, and all the other houses around us are dark and everyone else is asleep, as the feeling of loneliness. But we're now out of our house, we're into our cars, and we're driving, along and interacting with the world, with the other drivers.
Mm-hmm.
And, depending on where you are in the world, well, wherever you are in the world, there are going to be road rules.
Mm.
The attention that society pays to them is different. Speaking as someone who used to drive in Venezuela, that like there were road rules, I just didn't know them, and I don't know if anyone else did.
They were merely a jumping off point.
Yeah. Generally, the car that had the most dents in it went through first, because they were used to using their car as a battering ram to get through. Right. So, but here in Australia, like very observant of road rules, and there are penalties if you don't. And heavily enforced penalties if you don't observe the road rules, don't abide by the rules. But when we're in the driver's seat of our car, and let's call it the Ford values, it's a brand new car, it's got that new car smell, it's the top of the line values, the new season model of the Ford values. I'm not being endorsed by Ford, by the way. It just was the first car company that came to mind. But maybe you're a Bentley, like maybe you're like a top of the line, high self-worth, like you drive your Bentley, like you go crazy. But you're driving your new values car, and but you're a first-time driver, and you've got your buddy Kevin in the passenger seat, who is gently guiding you through and all of that kind of stuff. And when you are taking your values out into the world, you're a bit nervous. You're a first-time driver. Kind of the rules, how things are supposed to happen because you've been tested on them, and that's how you've got your license. But, by the time you get to the end of your street, you're coming across another car. And, you have to give way. You have to yield. Like, I think what you call yield, we call give way, right? So you get to the intersection, and there's, you know, the red inverted triangle, or it's a stop sign or whatever it is. And then, you know, you begin interacting with other cars, and there are going to be other cars who don't care about you. Other drivers in their cars who don't observe the road rules. So at some point, Kevin, you're not going to be in the car with them, and they're going to be driving around in their values, their lovely values car. And what do you say? What do you say to someone who, when driving their values, when living their life in their values, and their, you know, and they're like, but their values are like kind of transgressed. The boundary of their car has been transgressed. What do you say when they come back to you and go, yeah, I had a crash? And, you know, it was only a little, you know, fender bender or whatever, but the boundaries of my lovely new car, my values, have been dented. What do you say?
That's a good question. The first thing, you know, that comes to mind, you know, when that happens, when our boundaries have been crossed, and, you know, before we even look at how that happened or anything of the experiences, you know, I just want to sit with the person in that moment, you know, and just acknowledge how they're feeling, and whatever feeling that is. You know, if it's pain, you know, I'm here to sit with you in the pain. I can't change it, unfortunately, but you have somebody here. You know, and so I, you know, when our boundaries have been crossed in or broken in some way, you know, that's the first step. It's almost like triage. You know, we need to triage that emotion. You know, and whatever emotions are coming up and bubbling up, you know, we need to feel that, and to give them space. Once we are then, you know, able to do that, and we might think of, you know, over time, you know, I want to get back on the road, but I don't want this to happen again. You know, or, you know, I feel like I don't even know if I can drive again. You know, I don't even know if I'm there. Or when we are able to say, okay, you know, now is the time for me to drive again, but I know that I can't control how other cars operate. You know, that's the beauty then of being in that driver's seat, is being aware of all these moving pieces. You know, so knowing that, you know, yes, we can't control how other drivers interact, you know, but what is within our realm of control there. You know, like, do we want to engage with this driver in this way? You know, maybe that might be us, you know, getting into a different lane to allow them to speed on by. Yep. Or, you know, or maybe even turning down a different road. And, you know, or maybe that's, you know, driving down a different route entirely, or, you know, however that looks. But that's the beauty of boundaries too, is that we get to decide for us, you know, because if you know, say there's a driver that we're interacting with, and we're like, oh shit, it's this experience again, and I'm going to get dented here. You know, I see this driver coming up my rear mirror, they're going to blow me out of the water. You know, I think it's helpful in that moment to say, okay, well, what do I want to feel here? You know, do I want to feel, you know, like my boundaries are being crossed, or, you know, do I want to feel, you know, safe and secure and seen? You know, and likely we want to choose that one. So it's like, what can I do to make sure that I'm feeling this feeling? You know, and to continue that example, you know, what can I do to ensure that I am safe here? You know, what can I do to ensure that I am secure? You know, so as I see this car coming by and is going to destroy me, you know, that safety for me might look like getting over. And so I get over, and then in doing so, you know, I'm like, whew, you know, I just prevented that boundary from being crossed and from me being destroyed. And I also found myself in a lane with 30 other cars that are more in alignment with how I drive, you know, and then that's the connection that I found here, you know. And so that's the really cool thing is, you know, when we do practice those boundaries that are established out of our values, we naturally fall into these spaces that we're around people who, you know, who fill us with that connection, that authentic connection that we're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just being mindful of the time here. So I'm keen to ask this big question. And this came to me from listening to your podcast on boundaries, and it was one of the last points that you made. So, listener, viewer, if you haven't listened to Kevin's United Outsiders podcast on boundaries, it's awesome. It's a very practical kind of exercise in identifying your boundaries. And it's fantastic. There's he's got a worksheet and everything. And he does this whole, you know, press pause and go and think about it kind of stuff. It's lovely. And he very patiently explains the exercise to you. I can't recommend it enough. Go listen to it. And it's just like having this awesome, you know, conversation with Kevin right in your ears. It's beautiful. But and I mean what I say, Kevin, accept that. But you raised this, and I listened to your conversation, to your episode when I was walking the other day. And so, you know, Canberra is just coming out of lockdown right now after 10 weeks of lockdown. I've not been to the gym, but I've become a middle-aged man, and I like walking in the morning now. And so in my mind's eye, I'm listening to you when I'm walking on this street in my suburb here in Canberra, and you know, and so I'm kind of getting myself back into that place where I'm feeling what I was feeling again. But you had this really great point towards the end of your episode where you talked about how you know, even after developing your boundaries and putting it out into the world, there are going to be people who will go, yeah, you. Yeah, you're standing up for you. That's awesome. They're your people. But then there are going to be others who will be going, whoa, what's changed? And we will risk disappointing them. Not we will risk disappointing them. We will disappoint them because we're going to be saying no when they expected us to say yes, when they thought we would say yes because we've always said yes. And then suddenly we're saying no. And that was a really good point, because the point was all about how, you know, how prepared do we need to be to have these conversations? And you said that there were two schools of thought, don't be prepared, be in the moment, or be really prepared. And you know, somewhere on that spectrum, to be prepared, not to be prepared. I'm sure Shakespeare wrote that somewhere too. That is the question. But I wanted to say that I feel that when we a gay man experiencing loneliness, and we are bravely going to put ourselves out into the world by having, you know, just the right level of boundaries, that the seesaw is perfectly in balance between rigid boundaries and porous boundaries. It's the Goldilocks level of boundaries. Right? We're always into the Goldilocks zone, and people who I have worked with know that I'm always about Goldilocks everything. Goldilocks communication, Goldilocks sort of showing up, Goldilocks, you know, everything. But, you know,
yeah,
not too much, not too little, just right. So when we do, when we're, so a gay man, back to my point, gay man experiencing loneliness, bravely communicating our boundaries, those three things. And we fear that moment where we go, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that. We could go, I'm not going to do that because blah, like everything that's happening to me right now. Or we can go, no, full stop. And then put our Teflon underpants on because shit's going to get real. And we are going to get yelled at. We are going to get, you know, we're going to disappoint people. And for the lonely gay man, or for the lonely human, loneliness already goes straight to feelings of worthlessness, of not being worthy. And a boundary speaks to worthiness. And so when we're lonely, we don't feel like we're worth anything. But the pivot point goes from worthlessness to being worth this. And so the temptation there is, in my mind, this is, you know, from listening to you, this was all happening to me on this walk. And I think I got my phone out and sent you a voice memo going, oh my God, this was amazing. But I think that the whole point of communicating our boundaries is really hard, because we're saying no, and we risk, this is your words from earlier, I wrote these down. We risk losing someone.
Yeah.
And so because we don't want to lose someone, we lose ourselves. Conversely, when we lose someone by implementing our boundary, we gain ourselves. And it's all about that Goldilocks moment, right?
Yeah.
But when we are implementing our boundary, I forget who said this, but those who matter don't mind. Those who mind don't matter.
Yeah.
And yeah, is there a way that we can make that painless?
I don't think so, but I don't think we would want it to be painless.
Yeah, good answer.
You know, I think to say that it would be painless would be to paint a false picture, and you know, it's not the reality of the world that we're in. However, you know, pain can sometimes be helpful. It reminds us that we're human, and it can help in those moments of gratitude, you know, when we're not in those experiences. But you know, to exactly the beautiful point that you just raised, you know, when we do set boundaries, you know, absolutely there are very possible times that we will lose people, you know, and that's just a fact, and it's based, you know, it's just reality, it's life, it's math, you know. By implementing this thing, it's going to cause a reaction.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, we're, for some people, and sometimes it can be really helpful to prepare for that, especially if it's a drastic change. You know, maybe maybe in a romantic sense, you know, maybe we have done something for a while, and then we came to terms that, you know what, I'm no longer going to do this. That might, by implementing that boundary, that might cause that end of the relationship, or, you know, partnership, whatever that looked like. And yes, that's fucking painful, especially when we can say this happened because I implemented this boundary. However, like you said too, we find ourselves at that point. You know, we're able to say, no, this is who I am. And then from there, then we get to take this and find those people that don't matter that boundary, you know, and who don't mind what that boundary is. You know, that's where that genuine connection then comes out of. It's a painful process sometimes. And, you know, for me, you know, sometimes it can be helpful to know that it's a painful process, that we're going to get burned and hurt along the way, but it's not for nothing. You know, it's getting us to that connection that we are looking for. It's fucking hard.
Yeah.
Boundaries are hard.
And I think, you know, you raised that point in, or the example, you know, was, you know, in your episode was, you know, if you've normally been, you know, had previously been partying with a group of people and they're, you know, about to, and you've resolved to go, you know what, this is not serving me. I'm not going to do those drugs. This sounds like an anti-drug kind of, you know, don't just say no, said Nancy Reagan. But where we have those kind of, you know, all sorts of, there's like a bajillion different examples where we can, you know, go when we risk disappointing, upsetting people, things that were like once noticed that that we allowed in, and we've gone, no, actually, no more. And for me, I wanted to share this. I have, you know, while I'm the loneliness guy, and I've also got the lonely diplomat, and I also do coaching work. I shared to Kevin, I have a full-time 9-to-5 job, and that, you know, because there still needs to be, you know, roof over heads and foods in belly of me and the kids and all that kind of stuff, and we need to stay warm and we need to sit in the light and all that kind of stuff, like, you know, and as awesome and wonderful as it is, you know, this does not pay the bills at all. But I want to, in myself, in my work, have time to do this. And previously, before I realized that I was lonely, before I started my midlife crisis and all of that, I had been working for my employer for, you know, 17 years. And in that time, I had sort of sacrificed my boundaries to do what I thought that other people, to take the decisions that I thought other people expected me to take, and to do the things that I thought would get me promoted, get me an opportunity, get me an overseas posting, do all these kind of things that, you know, and I made those decisions. Mindfully, mindlessly, I made those decisions, and I got to where I was, and I was at my dead end. And the way back for me involved putting my work in its place. Saying yes to me first. Saying yes then to who was most important to me second, including my children. Me first, my children second, my relationship second. Because if I don't show up as me, I can't show up as dad. I can't show up as partner. I can't show up when I was married in my heterosexual marriage, you know, can't show up as husband, right? And 3, show up for my community, including work. So recently, I've had performance discussions, like start of a new program year, and, you know, what do you want to do when you grow up, Phil? And I said, I'm not looking for promotion. I'm not looking for anything. I need to just be able to leave work at 5 leave it behind, not have it come with me, not have my phone ringing at 10 o'clock at night, not have the expectations that, work will come to me at 6 o'clock that night, due at 8 a.m. the next morning. No, no more of that. I'm not that guy anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And I said to my boss, who I've known for a very long time, and they said, wow. And I was very clear, that this is why. This is what I'm doing. And if you want that, like I can bring all sorts of skills, I can bring all sorts of experience to this role. But if you want someone who's going to be working weekends, if you want someone who's going to be doing what needs to be done when it's dark outside, I'm not that guy. Get someone else.
Yeah. And
it was a moment of, making sure that I wore my Teflon underpants. And because I clearly said my boundary, like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm worth it, but I'm also worth it. I'm worth it to you because I'm awesome. I'm awesome at what I do, but I'm worth it within me. And relationships, workplaces are fantastic examples where we can then see where our boundaries are and if they're porous or rigid or somewhere in the Goldilocks zone. And I got this, I keep on getting this. I keep on getting this feedback whenever I do this at the office. Wow, thank you so much for being so candid. Which is like emphasis on the wow, because very few people, it appears, seem to do that. And then it allows me, like, meetings come up at 6 o'clock at night. I'm like, no, I'll find out about those in the morning. I'm not doing that one. I'm going home. I need time to not be at work to recharge. I need time to be with my family. I need time to connect with people through my other work. So I'm saying no, because I can't say yes to everything. Because if I say yes to everything, I'm saying no to myself.
Right.
How? I wanted to share that. I wanted to share that because for me, this topic is a really live one.
Yeah.
It's
that was beautiful.
Thank you. How this whole episode, Kevin, this whole chat has been about helping the gay man is experiencing loneliness, the viewer, the listener who is experiencing loneliness, to I guess identify the boundaries and then have the confidence to start communicating those boundaries. If I'm letting you into my castle, this is how you act. What's the big piece of advice that you could give? The one piece of advice for the gay man who's going, I need to lower the drawbridge, but I need to have a very clearly articulated set of rules for when you come into my castle.
I think the one piece of advice would be to, I think the biggest one that's just, calling out to me right now is, hold on just a second.
And the tension was cut. I hope you've got pen poised still, listener and viewer. I think that's hilarious. Here he is. He's back. He's back.
So
I love it. You're getting to the absolute crux of it. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Right.
Love it.
Yeah.
Couldn't be scripted.
we're having some issues with some of our plumbing, and so I knew that like the people would be coming soon, but it was just perfect timing. But yeah, sorry about that. The one piece of advice that I have is, to be gentle with ourselves in the process and to really hone in on that non-judgmental piece. Because we don't know what our boundaries are until we practice them. It's such an experimental and trial and error experience. And so, in the aftermath of maybe a boundary being too high or too porous, or maybe things didn't go the way that we planned, and we have learned now, like, oh, this is maybe I can shift my boundary over here. That's a really beautiful process. And when we're feeling lonely or emotional in different aspects, we can really be our own worst critics there sometimes. And so we want to be careful of that, of not judging ourselves in the process of figuring out what our boundaries are. Because we don't know what they are until we try, until we feel what feels right and what doesn't feel right. And our boundaries shift over time. Things that we were once comfortable with, we find that we're no longer comfortable with as life changes, or vice versa. And so, we just want to be diligent in that time too, and know that, we are growing and shifting and evolving people, and our boundaries will do that too. And it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be messy, but it's through that mess that we get to, find that connection there too. So I think that's one of my biggest pieces of advice.
Love it. Kevin, as we wrap up, how can people find you?
Yes, so one of the easiest ways is probably through Instagram. One of my boundaries that I'm working on is setting more boundaries with social media, because I have realized that I have kind of a toxic relationship with social media. But Instagram is one place that I do enjoy, because it's great to connect with people, and I've met so many great people like yourself through there. So Instagram is one really great way. So my profile is at K Moran Coaching, so KMORAN Coaching. People can find me there. And then the podcast, if they're interested, as well as we also have an Instagram page. It's at The United Outsiders. So then from there, my websites and different links come up, but that's probably the best way.
Excellent. Kevin, I love and just appreciate so much you and what you do in the world and how you serve your community, the wider queer global community. And I love how you do it. I love how you do it because you show up as you. And I want to thank you for showing up as you right now, in a real, beautiful, genuine, and authentic way today, answering some pretty hefty questions about loneliness, about your experience of loneliness, boundaries, and how a gay man experiencing loneliness can enforce their boundaries and get the connection that they need. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for creating this space and for the communities that you do create and bringing so many people together. So thank you for your kind words and just for everything that you do. I know there's so much on your plate, but you're doing such powerful and beautiful things too. So thank you as well.
I received that. Thank you so much. And a reminder, viewer, listener, that Kevin is on my team of coaches who can help you take a step beyond loneliness. So again, if you want to connect with me, if you want to stay connected to my work, go to the link in the episode description to be put on the mailing list, or if you want to take a step further, for $9.95 Australian dollars per month after the first month, so you get the first month free, come and join the Premium Subscribers Lounge on Facebook and get more access to me and other gay men who are putting their real, authentic selves into the world after learning from what their loneliness is telling them. It's an honor, it's a joy, an absolute privilege to be here with you in your ears regularly. And Kevin, thank you again so much for your time. And listener, viewer, thanks so much for spending some of your day connecting over coffee. See you next time.